Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Shootaround Ep.3. I am here with your co-host, 3 Cone, and we are here to discuss the NBA trade deadline. We're not going to be doing grading trades individually and things like that. We both did that on our own channels. So if you want to go watch that, go check it out on our channels. But we're going to more so frame this conversation around what the NBA landscape, what the power balance looks like now as a result of these trades, both this season as well as next season. So where do you want to start, Connor?
Some of the bigger trades. It was one of those deadlines where we didn't kind of get the stuff that we thought we might get. Like the Sabonis Raptors thing is one that was talked about forever. And it's like, this is probably going to happen. Doesn't end up coming to fruition. The Giannis trade doesn't end up happening. Ja Morant getting dealt. Instead, it's the shockers. It is the, Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Utah Jazz out of nowhere, and Anthony Davis to the Wizards out of all teams. You do end up getting like the Trae Young trade earlier. That was a shock that he was going to Washington in the first place. Zubats to the Pacers materialized almost out of nowhere. And then suddenly it's like, yeah, the Clippers are really, trying to blow this thing up a little bit and get younger. I guess I want to start by talking about those AD and Jaren Jackson trades because I think those are so interesting. I guess I'll start off by talking about the Wizards. I'm really excited about the direction they're going. I saw a lot of people, be like, what are the Wizards doing? They're not ready yet. And they might not be ready to win the East next season. But I think if you talk about this team, adding a playmaker in Trae Young, who has his weaknesses, but now he's being propped up by this fantastic defensive front court with AD, with Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George out there. That's a great grouping to go ahead and hide some of his deficiencies. I would imagine he has a chip on his shoulder of some kind after being dealt for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert, although shout out to Hawks legend CJ McCollum dropping 38 last night in a blowout loss. I feel like that's a good situation for him to be in. AD is the most talented big that Trae Young's ever played with. And you also talk about Anthony Davis now. He's got a playmaker in Trae. He's got a supporting cast. And it doesn't sound like he's the most excited to be in Washington. I don't blame him. It's not like they're a contender right now or anything. But he's now got to prove that he has value. He's going into the later stages of his career. He's looking for, maybe one more contract before it's all said and done. So he's got a chip on his shoulder. These young guys like Sarr has been so good so far this season. I love Keyshawn George as that connector. Trey Johnson is pretty quickly becoming one of my favorite shooters in the entire league. He is just lethal the second you give him any space. And I think having all these talented players around him is going to open that up. And we talk about this team, especially if they add a top pick, and it's the same thing with Utah, which I'm sure we're going to get into. We talked about it a little bit over text. Like if one of these two teams that made a big trade adds like a Darren Peterson, for example, imagine a lineup next year of Trae Young, Darren Peterson, Keyshawn George, Anthony Davis, and Alex Sarr. That is a really, really talented team. And for a franchise in the Wizards who is just, they haven't won 50 games in like a billion years, going for it and trying to be competitive in this Eastern Conference, I'm a fan of it. It's also why I don't mind the way that they're tanking. Like people for some reason are shocked that Anthony Davis isn't playing this season. Like AD was never going to play this season when the Wizards traded for him. Really, anybody.
He probably wasn't going to play anyways. It was it's not like we're trading for these guys and then we're benching them. AD had injury concerns for potentially missing the entire year, and Trae Young, apparently those issues were worse than previously thought when he ended up getting moved. We might talk about the whole tanking thing a little bit because I see people pearl clutching about that the way that they often do. But as for Trae and AD individually, I don't think when people say they're not ready, I mean, ready for what? What was this building to? What was going to be achieved with this young core had it gone untouched and entirely been organic? I do like some of the pieces on that team. Alex Sarr especially, I think, could have been a perennial all-star caliber player, regardless of any of this. However, what exactly, did these trades step all over the future Eastern Conference champions, Washington Wizards? At a certain point, especially when you're a franchise like the Wizards, who have been bad for so long, the times where the Wizards have been good in my time as a commentator has been much less than the times that they've been absolutely putrid. At a certain point, you can't be like, yeah, we're on year 8 of the tank. we're on year 8 of not sure what our direction is. Especially given that you were I don't think there's ever been a time in history where a team has acquired this much talent in one season during the season, not in the off season, to acquire this much talent without giving up anything of major substance. is like, it's worth doing. Like, if it does not work, the consequences are not that severe. This is not going to fuck things up. Like, my only major concern with the Anthony Davis acquisition was it potentially hindering Alex Sarr's development. And I do think there is a real chance that it will reduce the box score for him, that he will put up less points, he'll get less shot attempts, probably less rebounds as well. However, at the same time, Anthony Davis and Alex Sarr, that is a similar archetype of player. They are, those power forward / center based on the modern definition. Got a little bit of versatility, got a little bit of a jump shot, but ultimately is best as a rim runner, as a alley-oop target, as a dunker spot, dump off type guy. And I think that Anthony Davis can be a very good teacher and a very good influence to Alex Sarr as to how to play the way that Anthony Davis does as effectively as he can. Hopefully he's not giving him too much advice about how not to get injured. But aside for that, I feel like the mentorship there is ultimately worth doing. Even if AD ends up just playing out his contract there and leaving, that's still, I think, good for Sarr's development. Even though, again, I do think the box score might not have the jump over the next 2 seasons for him that they otherwise would have, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he'll be a worse player for it. Sometimes a box score is not necessarily a good reflection of a player's impact one way or the other. So on the Wizards end of things, I'm not expecting much of this. I don't even necessarily think that this move guarantees that they are a playoff team next year, given that Anthony Davis has the injury issues that he does. If he plays 35, 40 games, and Trae Young misses 20 games. He's had a lot of injury stuff recently. It's very well possible that this still isn't a playoff leap for them. But you gave up the 30th pick in the draft. I don't remember what the other pick was, the protection on it, but it was supposedly, I think it was top 20 protected Warriors pick.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this was.
You gave up at worst, you gave up the 29th pick and the 21st pick in the draft. That's a very worthy sacrifice for the potential upside of this. And I do have questions defensively about the double Trae backcourt. Obviously, you wouldn't have to worry about that if you got Darren Peterson, but you don't want to bank on such a thing. But overall, again, I didn't love the Anthony Davis trade. Not that I loved the Trae Young trade either, but I understood that one a little bit more, just because you have a lot of guys who are play finishers and not playmakers, and that definitely benefits their development. But in the case of both of those deals, you gave up so little that to have anything but praise for those deals, I think, is a little bit ludicrous.
Yeah, that's kind of my perspective on it. I feel like people sometimes just see picks nowadays and they're like, oh my God, they gave up 2 first-round picks for Anthony Davis. And, AD's been so injured and all that stuff. It's yeah, but how valuable are those picks actually? It's similar to the Jaren Jackson trade. That trade, immediately, I also like that for the Utah Jazz because the picks they gave up are really not anything. The most interesting one is that late Suns pick, but otherwise it's the best of theirs, the Cavs and the Timberwolves, and that could be a lottery pick because the West is deep. But with Utah, they're going to be pushing for the play-in at the very least, and I think they'll get there. So it's probably a back half of the lottery pick for a team that wants to be competitive and is kind of getting to that point where they're ready. Keontae George has taken a step forward in a big way. Lowry's great. They're going to have Kessler back next season. They've always had these stretches where they win more games than you expect, especially to start seasons, and then they really start to bottom out. And it's this team doesn't really want to win right now. Jaren in that front court, I think, is going to be awesome alongside Walker Kessler as a defensive duo. Has so much size too with Lowry out there, makes up for Keontae being a bit smaller as a guard. Again, we have to figure out what they do at the 2. It's very similar to the Wizards, where if they get Darren Peterson, this is a team that's loaded from day one out there in the Western Conference. They've got really solid depth with Collier and Bryce Sensabaugh. They are in a really good spot, and they still have so many draft picks to give up. And again, the ones they gave up, it's nothing that's that valuable. I think people kind of just see picks and freak out. They're oh my God, they gave up 3 first-round picks as one of the worst teams in the NBA for Jaren Jackson Jr. It's they got 1 million of them, and they're not really any of their valuable picks.
I really like the Jaren swing for the Utah Jazz. In particular, I just find the idea of the 777-footer lineup super intriguing. Lowry would be playing the 3 on that team alongside Walker, and Jaren. And I mean, they've tried it a little bit with Kyle Filipowski, but Kyle Filipowski is like an okay backup big man. It didn't really work when they did that, but Jaren has the versatility on both ends of the floor to make that work in a way that hasn't otherwise. I watched Jaren's debut game with the Utah Jazz, and I was immediately like, yeah, Will Hardy gets how to use this guy. Like, it was very methodical, very deliberate, and that was something that was missing a lot from the Memphis Grizzlies offense this year. That was a big reason why last year Jaren was so damn good offensively, like statistically one of the best isolation players in the NBA, because they knew how to get him the ball where he was most effective. And the Jazz were doing that like immediately. They also pulled off a hell of a tank job by just not playing Lowry at all in the fourth quarter of that game. So I think they're still very cognizant of their goal of still being a high lottery pick team. But I do think the question of the two guard is the most interesting one with that team, because you have the front court, and then you have Keontae George, who is basically playing at a borderline all-star level. Like, if he put up those numbers on a 50-win team, he'd be in the all-star game right now. And there's a part of me that feels like I wish he was a little bit more playmaking oriented than scoring oriented, for the fact that he's now going to have 3 different 7-footers to be setting up all the time. But I don't think it's like concerning. It's just more so like it would be a little bit more ideal. And also potentially he just does go that way with the context of those guys being available. However, the two guard, Ace Bailey, I think this speeds up the need for his develop. Like, he needs to put it together quicker now if he wants that spot. And I don't know that he will. Ace Bailey has been up and down throughout his rookie season, and I think it's very clear that this is a guy who was born to score the ball. He clearly has that upside to his game. However, it's not anywhere near seamless at this point. There's been times where he's been a good catch and shoot guy. There's been times where he hasn't really been. There's been times where he's creating those mid-range shots, but also at the same time, when you look at the pecking order of that team, how much do you want him doing that when everybody is healthy? He's a decent cutter. He's a good, like, play finisher because he's pretty damn athletic and long. However, defensively, not there. Playmaking wise, not there. And again, the thing that he is the best at, which is scoring the ball, is still got a lot of rough edges around it, which is entirely understandable and reasonable for a young player. However, those rough edges are a huge problem next year if they're not figured out, if they're trying to be a playoff team, which I think is the goal, is that this offseason you address the rest of the roster issues and you go into next year with the healthy Kessler and see what you can do. And I just don't know that Ace Bailey will be the answer. And if they don't end up getting a high enough draft pick to get Peterson, or I feel like Debonsa, you could, if you want to just go for the incredibly tall team, you could play him at the 2. You do have trouble with potentially drafting Cam Boozer. Cam Boozer does not work on this team at all, unless you just want to have a hilarious roster and play Cam at the 2. But I'm betting probably not. So if they don't land those picks and Ace Bailey doesn't end up being the answer, what is the answer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's when, I mean, they've put themselves in a position to take a swing on a guy if someone becomes available. I can't really think of who that guy out there is that fits perfectly. Just getting someone definitely defensive minded to play next to Keontae, because Keontae's not stopping anybody. Like, as much as the offensive development has been awesome, they definitely need someone who can guard in the backcourt. And Ace has shown those flashes. He's got good size and length to be a good defender, but like you said, it's just not really there yet for him up until this point. Maybe because, you know, he's not going to really be asked to do scoring all that much other than pretty much off-ball stuff in that type of context. Maybe he'd be better next season and they tell him like, hey, we want you to start, but we need you to be good enough defensively to hold up. Maybe he just locks in, sits in the chair, and that ends up working out. But that's, of course, it feels like a long shot for what they really need. So it's an important lottery. I mean, for both the Jazz and the Wizards, if either one of them jump up and again grab a Darren Peterson, it changes things drastically for them. Really, a lot of teams. I mean, I think another thing coming out of this deadline is like, the lottery is so important this year. Like there are so many insane swings that can happen to the power balance of the NBA when it comes to this lottery. I mean, we talk about like the Indiana Pacers now who gave up a pick that hilarious protections on that. Their pick this year where it's like top 4, we keep it. You can have it if it's 5 through 9, but anything else, we get it back.
What was even the point of the 10 through 30? Because like maybe if it was 10 through like 15, I'd get it. But like you guys aren't gonna be. There's nothing will happen that would put you guys in the 20s. Like that protection is entirely unnecessary. It doesn't matter. It just feels weird.
It's cool though. But I mean, it's just aura. I think at that point, it's just protections for the sake of aura.
Yeah, feels like a very Danny Ainge type of thing to do. But yeah, I'm not sure with the two. I mean, I'm with you on it needing to be more of a defensive-minded guy because Jaren and Walker Kessler will be enough to be a good defense, but I still think you need a perimeter defender out there to be a great defense. I do really love, by the way, the Jaren Kessler combination because Kessler is a good rebounder, which is obviously an issue with Jaren, and then he's also like a very good stationary rim presence, while Jaren is a really good weak side coming out of nowhere and blocking the shot type of guy, while Walker's just like, yeah, I'm big as fuck, like Brooke Lopez style. I'm just big standing here and there's nothing you can do about it. So like they should have like a really good backline help for in case any of their guards are getting cooked on the perimeter. But of course, you would ideally like that to not be the case. I do think Vince Williams Jr. could be the answer there because he's a good defensive player and his 3-point shot has been getting better. Bryce Sensabaugh, I think, is built to be a 6-man, at least on this team specifically. Yeah. So like, I'm not really looking at him as the answer there. I did really like Taylor Hendricks, but he was included in that deal, so it's not going to be him either. I kind of like the idea of going after Herb Jones, although I don't know that the offensive fit is all that great there. But like if you had Herb defensively with Jaren and Walker, you are instantly at least a top 10 defense. And I would argue with your only weak links being Keontae and Lowry, but the 3 other guys being so damn good, wouldn't be a perfect defense. You would still have guys who can be targeted in a playoff setting, but at least in terms of regular season dominance, I think that could be a top 10 defense if they went and got someone, at least a very good perimeter defender, not even necessarily of Herb Jones caliber. And then offensively speaking, I think there is no reason why the Jazz could not be a top 5 offense next year. I think that's kind of damn near a minimum expectation, presuming injuries do not get in the way, because Will Hardy clearly has the sauce as an offensive coach. I think the way that people have managed to see that, in spite of the fact that the Jazz haven't even been a super high ranking offense, goes to show you what that guy could do if he has the right pieces. One way or the other, I'm expecting Utah to be a playoff team next year. I think they could even be a like 50 plus win top 4 seed if possible, if health permits.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've set themselves up pretty clearly as they're going to be a lot of people's pick to be the jump team next year. You know, we had like a few years ago, it was like, last year was like the Rockets. People are like, yeah, this is probably the jump team. This year it's the Spurs. The Jazz, I think, are going to be in that seat going into next season, where it's like, yeah, with all these guys, all this talent, especially again, if they get some lottery luck, then we're going to be talking about the Utah Jazz as being back in a big way. And it's, shout out to them. It didn't take them that long. It wasn't that long ago that they dealt away Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, getting rid of, 2 of the better players in your franchise history. And the fact that they've turned it around, Lowry became a star. They got another guy in Keontae. They took another shot on Jaren. It's been a long few years because they've been so bad when they've been bad. But all in all, like, it's not been that long. And that's one of the things with the tanking stuff people talk about. It's like the Jazz trade those guys away in 2022? Was it that they dealt those 2 away, summer of 2022 or 2023? I think it was late 2022. So it's not been that long. Like, yeah, we're 4 years in the future, but we're 4 years in the future. And it's not like the Jazz are just barely going to be, in that playoff conversation. Yeah. They're going to be heavy in that. They could be top 10 on both ends.
And the irony is that they have most of the building of this roster was achieved without lottery picks. Like their lottery picks, was Keontae a lottery pick?
He was like end of line. I think he was 13th.
Right.
If I remember right.
Right. So like he's the best player on that team. that was a lottery pick selected by the Jazz. Lowry was obviously a lottery pick, but I believe Walker Kessler was a mid to late first round pick.
Yeah, because he was picked up. I don't even
remember if Utah selected him.
It was the Wolves pick that they traded for. That was in like the late 20s. Yeah.
I also want to give credit where it is due, unfortunately, to Danny Ainge, who has been a big time target of NBA fans of like, what are you doing? Stop sitting on your hands. Like, clearly you should have traded Lowry forever ago. Having a super high asking price on Walker Kessler, to the frustration of a lot of different fan bases who wanted to trade for him. And like, I was definitely very much in the camp of like, dude, just trade Lowry. Like, general NBA tank rebuild convention would tell you that if you have a young star player who is not actually that young, like, I shouldn't even use the word young, like Lowry is like basically NBA middle age. He's been like 26, 27, 28 on this team. All conventions of traditional rebuilding would say trade that guy. But I think now that they haven't, they're in a much better position. Like, if this team didn't have Lowry and instead they just got like a couple of draft picks and a whatever young player out of him, I wouldn't have nearly as much upside for this team. But between him, Jaren, and Walker, that's just so many great play finishers. And Keontae is going to have a very fun time setting all of them up. But like, in terms of Will Hardy's offensive system, where there's all this movement, cutting, bigs, shooting, and all of that, like, there will be a lot of fun to that offense, and I'm looking forward to it a lot. So I think Utah, I wouldn't even be shocked if Utah was a team that could like low-key scare somebody in the first round or even the second round if they got a favorable matchup to start. Like, if they faced OKC, if Utah took 2 games in that series, I wouldn't be like, holy shit. Like, I could see it because there's just a lot of talent and a lot of pieces there. And I could even see them being a contending level team by the second season. Like, I think I texted you that I was like, if they got Darren Peterson and he is like basically ready to go package star player right out of the gate, like a lot of people project him to be, by his second season, I think the Jazz would be contenders at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. We talk about people. There are people who don't really watch the NBA that are like, oh, well, everything's the same and this and that. Like, teams really don't, change things up. When it, like, just a couple of years ago, it's like the Rockets try and go full small ball, and now like double big is back in a big way, and the Jazz are like, what if we did triple big? Like, there's such an interesting team from just a roster construction standpoint. Easily one of the teams I'm most anticipating and excited to watch next season. I can't wait to see how it looks. I mean, we just got a little taste of it with Jaren Jackson's debut.
But I want the full load.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. I was waiting for it. The fact that it took even more than a beat, I'm surprised by, but the fact that we got to see a little bit of it with Lowry and Jaren, and they looked so good in that first game together, second game together, Jaren put up literally the same exact, like, identical stat line, which is insane. It's going to be really fun. I can't wait to watch that team next season. And of course, things get tougher in the Western Conference as it goes. But I mean, we talked about, or plan on talking about, the Eastern Conference here a little bit, because the East looks pretty fun this season. I mean, we think about the playoffs. Yeah. I'm like really excited for the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Yeah, we can move beyond the next season because we also had some big trades from this deadline that are very predicated to this season specifically. Although maybe we should hit the zoo on the Pacers thing real quick before we get into the depths of that. So we can kind of keep it split on the upcoming shit. I love that deal. I've obviously where that pick ends up falling is a very huge factor in all of this. It would be, I'm trying to even picture what that team looks like. I think Dabonsa is probably the most ideal fit-wise guy there. Cam Boozer and Pascal Siakam would kind of be a little bit weird. And then Darren Peterson, like, you want him to have the ball in his hands, but then you obviously want Tyrese to have the ball in his hands. Not that the Pacers would be better off not getting either of those guys, obviously, but just it is a team where I do think the fit is like kind of specific to one of those 3 guys. However, like, I like that Zoo is just so different from Miles Turner. I love that it is just a completely different style of big man. I thought that the Jay Huff edition was like an indicator that they are clearly looking for another stretch big. But with Zoo, I think I've put this take out a million times before. I think a big man having a nasty floater is one of the most underrated, valuable skills in the NBA. And in a way that is, he's also very athletic, so he works as a lob target, as like vertical spacing as well. But like, I think people just chalk up spacing to 3-point shooting, but Zoo, by virtue of having such a goddamn good floater, like it makes it harder for a big man to rotate to block someone who's driving inside, because just a simple dump off pass, and now Zoo has just a free look at a shot that he can hit damn near 60% of the time. So like when Tyrese is diving into the paint and he needs to kick out, I think kicking it to Zoo 5-10 feet from the basket ends up being a lot more valuable than kicking it out to Miles Turner, who defenses will oftentimes leave wide open intentionally in the playoffs.
Yeah, Zoo is, it really is interesting how they went from one of the guys who it's like, oh, everybody wants him because he blocks shots, shoots threes, and now they're like, no, we just want this big dude. We just want someone who's gonna like bludgeon guys down low. And I think, you know, Miles Turner wasn't necessarily like a bad screen setter, but Zoo is like one of the best screen setters in the NBA. Like imagine him setting one of those big body screens to get Halliburton going downhill. You've still got shooters out there like a Nesmith and an Obi Toppin. Siakam, it's going to be an incredible.
Toppin a shooter.
If you watch him play the Thunder in the finals, then absolutely he was a shooter. TJ McConnell was a shooter in the finals too, though, I guess. So maybe that's different, especially you put him in the mid range, frying literally everybody. I'm getting PTSD. I can't talk about it, but like. You surround Halliburton with space and this big body, and like you said, as a dump off threat. Also, vertical spacing is a very real thing, and Zoo is someone who can go up there and get that. He's more physical than Miles Turner is too. I think that's an identity that's going to benefit them a lot. Trying to make another playoff run. I saw some people say that it's a lot to give up. It's risky and all this stuff. Like, yeah, there's definitely risk involved with it, whether they give up their first this year or a 2029 and a 2031 first. That's just so far away. We never really know. But you're talking about a team that just made the NBA Finals and was in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. That if there's any team that can afford to take a risk, it is the Indiana Pacers, and they've earned that right, in my opinion. Sure, Halliburton coming off the Achilles, you have to be like a little bit worried, but it's not like, 15, 20 years ago where an Achilles, it's like, oh, your career's over. I mean, Kevin Durant tore his Achilles and then since has had some of his best seasons. Tatum is close to coming back. He might come back this season from the injury. Halliburton's going to be fine. He doesn't feel like a player that at all is going to be hurt by that. Maybe more so some rust next season, getting into a rhythm, especially early on. But by the playoffs, I'm going to be shocked if we're not seeing Halliburton.
He had that entering the season last year. Like, remember towards the start of the season, he was kind of stinking it up and everyone was like, Tyrese Halliburton's Linsanity run is over. Little did they know it was about to get so much more Linsane.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard Linsane used as an adjective. So that's a fun one. I'm going to put that one in the vocabulary. Yeah, I mean, I literally made a video that was like the Pacers have a Tyrese Halliburton problem early in the season because I'm like, Halliburton is really, really good, but is he going to be like championship #1 level, like your best player in a title type team, or do they need to find somebody else? The answer is yes, he is capable of being that very, very clearly. And I think Zoo is going to benefit in very similar ways with Halliburton to the way he benefited off of James Harden. He's a great defensive piece to continue to build up that identity. This Pacers team is just going to be fantastic next season. You bring back Halliburton, they probably will have to look for like maybe one more volume score type guy with Benedict Mathurin being gone, which is where, if they did get like a Darren Peterson, he could try and fill that role if they wanted him to off the bench. But I'd like one more volume score, maybe one more depth big guy. J Huff is fine, but I'd like him more if he's like your third guy. You've seen some improved play from like Jarris Walker as of late, and Nembhard is kind of starting to pick it up a little bit and more be like the MIP type guy that we were expecting coming into the season before injuries ravaged the team. The Pacers are going to be amazing next season. I mean, Zubac's in that lineup. It's just so fun to think about Halliburton and him, him setting screens and dumping off, like you said, to those push shots over and over again. It's going to be nightmare for any team they play in the playoffs. So like, why does Zubac's have 14 points on 7 of 7 shooting, and every single one of them is just a little baby floater off a Halliburton dump off? It's going to drive Eastern Conference teams insane.
Yeah. Like I said, that skill is just super undervalued. It's basically the third way that a big man can space, and the fact that he also has the vertical spacing as a lob target is like, it might not be the same. There might be more clunky driving lanes than there would be otherwise, but at the same time, It's driving lanes and like a pass to Zoo, I think from a possession to possession standpoint is worth more than a pass out to Miles Turner from 3. And there's a part of me that feels like stretch bigs a lot of the time can be a little bit of a gimmick just because we like the idea of a center being able to shoot. But then when the playoffs come around, like we saw this with Miles last year, we saw this with Brook Lopez with the Bucks, where like, that's cute. You're 7 feet tall and you can shoot. That's cute. You're still a worse shooter than most wings and guards, so we're going to leave you open a lot of the time. That same thing does not work with Zoo. And as for where that lottery pick is positioned, from what I have seen from most mock drafts, not a draft guy, but what I have seen is that primarily after that top 3, it's a lot of point guards and centers. And if you end up missing out on those point guards or centers, what are the odds that either of them are better than Tyrese Halliburton or Zubats minimum in the next 2 seasons? Probably not that high. I'm sure there's somebody in there that isn't either a point or a 5, but like for the most part, like I would have rather had Zoo than some rookie center, and then you obviously have no need at the point guard position. So I think that was a worthy risk of making. My only argument against it is that I feel like you could have done this trade in the offseason and not given up quite as much value, especially because it seemed like the Clippers were pretty desperate to get rid of Zoo after the James Harden deal. So it felt for a deal that should have been kind of expedited and rushed by the Clippers. They ended up getting a pretty damn solid package in return. But ultimately, like, I still would say this was a good move from the Indiana Pacers. And I do think that it makes the Eastern Conference really interesting next year, because all the other teams that are top dogs, or at least have the potential to be, I think there's no reason why they wouldn't be back next year. And I think between the Pacers, the Celtics, the Knicks, the Cavaliers, and the Pistons, like, I think that's 5 teams that could genuinely win the Eastern Conference. And I can't remember the last time that there were that many teams that truly had a real shot.
You talked about a little bit, the Clippers, of course, traded Zoo. They also traded Harden to the Cavaliers. That's a team that I thought was just going to win the East this season. They were my pick going into it. And instead, the East does feel like super wide. So the Cavaliers grabbing Harden were my, yeah, the Clippers were my pick to win the Eastern Conference. I thought it would be a Thunder Clippers finals out there. But yeah, no, the Cavaliers were my pick, and they've just kind of been disappointing this season. So it's opened things up a lot, because the Knicks have also been super up and down. The Celtics have been shockingly good without Jason Tatum. Pistons, no one really picked them to be the 1 seed. I mean, even like the Raptors, I think there are some things they need to do. Like, they need to consolidate a little bit, but they are in that spot where they have salary and assets to make an upside swing if they want to. Orlando's been playing better as of late. We'll have to see if, Paolo can figure out it as the number 1 option, or Franz, like what happens there. But even them,
the thing with them is they just don't play well together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at all the games where like, oh shit, Paolo's figuring it out. Yeah, because Franz hasn't been playing. That's the answer every time, is they do not play well together at all. And that's a big fucking problem. I think the Orlando Magic are genuinely going to have to trade one of those 2 guys to make it work. But I don't want to get into the weeds of that. I think the most important deadline move was the James Harden deal. Yeah. And I understand why Cavaliers fans get a sour taste in their mouth as a result of this. First of all, James Harden has the reputation that he does, which I think a lot of it is unwarranted. But then you're also trading for a player who is a decade older. But at the same time, Donovan Mitchell might have been leaving. There's a part of me that's like, okay, we'll just trade Donovan Mitchell while his value is super high and it's not even expected, and then keep Garland and Mobley as your future. But like, I don't know, the Garland thing, it really seems like he might not put the health together. It could very well end up being like a Stephen Curry thing, where like there's a bunch of health issues early on and then it's not anymore. I don't know. It seemed like it was too tight of a window here to be allowing that to continue to be a problem. And my take on that trade overall was like, is it ideal for the Cavaliers to have to trade Garland? No. Is it ideal for the Clippers to have to trade Harden? No. But with those circumstances being as they are, this is the best return for both sides. because if the Cavaliers traded Darius Garland anywhere else, they were not going to get an all-star caliber guard in return. And if the Clippers traded James Harden anywhere else, they were not going to get an all-star caliber guard in return. So I think this was a perfect trade partner situation. And the big thing for me about Garland versus Harden, Garland is a better off-ball mover, no doubt about that. But James Harden is a better slasher, pretty equal playmaker, similar pull-up three-point shooter. And for me, this probably sounds ridiculous to some people, but hear me out at home. This is a huge defensive upgrade. It's a huge defensive upgrade. And I understand James Harden does not have a reputation of a defensive piece. That is obviously the case. However, James Harden not really trying that hard on defense is still a better defender than Darius Garland trying his ass off because of the size difference. James Harden is over 30 pounds heavier than Darius Garland. He is 4 inches taller. One thing about James Harden is you can't really target him. Even if he's not always going to give you a super impressive effort on that end, even if he can occasionally have those moments where he's a little bit of a cone.
That's me.
It's so funny. At the same time, you can't push him around. You can't be like, let's get this guy in the post against one of our big men. Like a big part of that Indiana Pacers series last year, when Darius Garland did play, they were targeting him like a motherfucker. Like, I put out my small guards deep dive very recently, and I was like, okay, I need to find some highlights of Darius Garland being targeted. First game's 10 minutes highlights, 2 minutes into it, there was like a perfect example of how aggressively they were targeting him. And there were a couple of more throughout the video. That same thing will not apply here. You cannot target James Harden. You can't abuse that as a mismatch because it's not a mismatch. Like, you just can't push James Harden around like that. And that fundamental difference, on top of course, the health. The health is the main thing in terms of the overall value of this, being that James Harden has just been an Iron Man throughout his entire career. He's available all the time. Mm-hmm. But like that, your weakest link defensively is no longer a weak link, at least not nearly as weak as it was before.
Yeah. And yeah, Harden is like genuinely a pretty solid post defender, like you said, because he's got size. Harden's also got pretty good hands. Like, he can get in passing lanes. That's something that he's capable of. And again, the big thing is he's going to be available. Like, I know Cavs fans are upset about it. I love this deadline. The Cavaliers are maybe my biggest winners of the trade deadline. They're in that conversation, grabbing Harden. And also, I like Keon Ellis a lot for this team. Dennis Schroeder isn't a perfect player by any means. He's not been great this season, but he's an upgrade for sure over Lonzo, who's given you literally nothing. He can play a somewhat similar role. But Harden, I mean, you see it in the first 2 games. Both fourth quarters, the Cavaliers go down, and it's like, okay, they need to make something happen. And it's huge James Harden shots. That step back 3 in the final 40 seconds against the Nuggets last night to go ahead and tie the game is an unbelievable look.
The Kings were up all game against the Cavs because they just could not miss from outside.
Yeah.
Like DeMar and Russell Westbrook were hitting pull-up threes and shit. And also, his name right now,
Neat Clifford,
that was a fun game. He was hitting some nasty shots. But James Harden hit back-to-back threes, like last couple of minutes of the fourth, like completely shifted the momentum Cleveland's way. And I think just in general, James Harden, especially like a lot of the issues that people bring up with James Harden are Houston Rockets James Harden issues. Like things that have just not been that applicable to me in this second stage of his career. He did, when he played for the Sixers, he did have like an abysmal game 7. That is true, undeniably the case. However, a big thing here is James Harden doesn't necessarily need to put up major points in order for this team to work. Like, the big thing for me of this is it means that the Cavaliers can restore the offensive system that was so effective last year. Darius Garland's playmaking and pull-up three-point shooting was so foundational to the way that team plays that as soon as he is gone, it turned into Donovan Mitchell hero ball. That is a big reason why Donovan Mitchell has been putting up like crazy numbers this year because he has to put on the backpack offensively. That is not the case anymore. Both of those games, Donovan Mitchell was deferring to James Harden in the fourth quarter, and it was something that he could do. It was something that worked. And like, we haven't even seen him play with Mobley yet. That makes things interesting as well. But for the most part, like, I don't think James Harden needs to be a 20 point per game scorer necessarily for this offense to work. He just needs to be able to drive effectively. That's another thing I don't even think I mentioned, that he's way better on the drive. Both of them shoot a similar percentage and volume at the rim. However, James Harden gets fouled so much more, like a difference of like 5 free throw attempts per game versus last year's Garland. So the playmaking, the offensive system of the past that was so successful returns, and you did it for basically the price of, yes, Darius Garland will be in the NBA in 10 years and James Harden won't be, but your window is like 2 to 3 years from now. I didn't ever feel like the Cavaliers were like a budding dynasty. I was like, this is a team that could win one championship. So make the moves, make the proper choices for that window now, because I don't know that such a window will exist again for a very long time. And I think potentially, 8 years from now, James Harden is retired and Darius Garland is a multi-time all-star. I think you can live with that result if at the bare minimum you can say we gave it what we could. Not even winning a title, but just saying we went all in when we had the opportunity. It did not work, but I don't regret putting all of our cards on the table.
Yeah, I mean, and it was never going to be the case. And this is coming from I'm a huge Evan Mobley guy. He was my favorite player going into the draft class. Like, Mobley and Garland as like your two building blocks. Like, you get rid of, say you have to trade Donovan Mitchell because you disappoint in the playoffs again next year. Those two guys, unless you get like another guy like the way that Donovan Mitchell is, who's like, borderline top 10 player, you're just not going to win at any point. So if you weren't able to win with Donovan Mitchell, it's going to be really hard to win with somebody else and get that guy in time before it's like, we should probably go ahead and rebuild this thing anyways. They had to take a swing. And yeah, a lot of Cavs fans hate it. It is scary, the idea of trading someone who is 26 years old for someone who's 36 years old. But Harden is just a straight up better player. I mean, you see, like, Jared Allen just had his best back-to-back games of the season. He had 20 plus in both games. The efficiency was
spoon-fed.
He's getting spoon-fed. 11 of 12 shooting against the Kings, 10 of 16 for 22 points against the Denver Nuggets. Harden had 8 assists against the Kings. 4 of those were to Jared Allen. And again, as a big Evan Mobley guy, he's not quite taken the step that I wanted to see this season. I was thinking this was going to be the year that Mobley takes that big step forward. Last year was a big step. This year was like the one. Hasn't materialized quite, and I think not having Garland is part of that, but now having James Harden, like, Mobley is going to put up more points per game just because 4 to 5 times a game he's going to catch a lob from Harden or get a wide open shot under the basket. He's got good touch mobility under the rim the way that like a Jared Allen does, and you put Mobley, like, he can also hit a couple of threes, he can handle the ball a little bit himself. So Harden hits him on a cut, he's able to, spin around defender, lay it up and in just because he's bigger than that guy. Like, Mobley is going to his life's going to be so much easier on that offensive end, which will also allow him to have to do less, self-created buckets, giving him more room to give effort on the defensive end and pick up this team's defense. Like you said, I think that's also a big improvement that they're going to see because you can't now target Garland, and Allen and Mobley don't really have to do all that much work offensively. It's just Harden and Donovan Mitchell.
Keon Ellis is here.
Yeah, and Keon Ellis is here as well. Like, Donovan Mitchell, credit to him too.
Playing his ass off on defense. I watched both of Cleveland's games post deadline, and I was like, when Keon Ellis is in the game, my eyes are on him whenever it's the other team on offense, and it's actually crazy how much he does. My only major complaint would be that he hasn't been playing enough. Like, I swear to God, if he's on the Cavs now and he's still playing sub 20 minutes, I'm gonna snap, because he's better than Dennis Schroeder, and they have enough ball handling between Harden and Mitchell that I think that will consolidate in the playoffs, though, when there's just more Harden and Donovan Mitchell minutes, then there will be more room for an off guard like Keon Ellis and less necessity for Dennis Schroeder. But that has been bothersome to me. But what do you think? Oh, actually, I did want to throw this out there, and then I'll say that James Harden's never played with a pair of bigs this good before.
No,
not a pair.
Yeah, for sure. He's played with better bigs generally, but a duo like this, like, no. And I mean, it feels like Harden, it's not the best playmaking he's ever been, but I feel like playing with like Zoo especially, it's some of the best like guard to big playmaking we've ever seen from James Harden. Yeah. And now to be able to do that with these two very, very talented bigs. And also Donovan Mitchell doesn't get enough credit for improving as a playmaker too in his recent career, like since coming to Cleveland. Like, yeah, it's an awesome pairing.
Through a no look like pass to Jalen Tyson under the basket in that Nuggets game that I was like, oh, I know he had that.
The Harden dime too to Jalen Tyson, top of the key, where he kind of drew over two defenders and like went up and like eye faked one way and got it to him wide open. Like Jalen Tyson, also the weapons, Jalen Tyson and Sam Merrill out there in the perimeter for him. Yeah. It's going to be ridiculous. I made a whole video about the Cavs last night, so I've looked into it a ton, some of the numbers. Like this team is going to put up points.
I've also found it interesting how much they've been willing, and part of this is personnel, who they're matching up against, but I've found it interesting how willing they've been to throw Keon Ellis in at the small forward spot. Fucking why not? Like the Kings, the third biggest guy out there was Neek, and then it was mostly like Strother. So like, yeah, Keon Ellis can defend those guys relatively well, even though Neek did have that big game. But what I wanted to bring up next is like, how do you think this affects the power balance of the Eastern Conference this year? Does Cleveland suddenly get just in the same tier, if not even potentially above that of the Pistons, the Knicks, and the Celtics? The Celtics, there is the important caveat of like, there is like a shot that Jason Tatum actually does return this year, and that makes things interesting. It depends what his capability actually ends up being after such a long time off after tearing an Achilles. But I think if he's legit, I think if Joel Embiid can be healthy entering the playoffs, they could be a sneaky, interesting team as well. There is a potential for the Eastern Conference playoffs to be more interesting, I think, than they really have been in quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, especially real quick, I want to shout out the Charlotte Hornets, who are on fire, had won 9 in a row before losing to the Pistons last night in one of the brawls of the season, where we're probably going to see Isaiah Stewart miss like the rest of the year almost for leaving the bench.
Isaiah Stewart, ethical violence.
Yeah, if there was any moment to run off the bench and try to fight someone, it was that one from Isaiah Stewart. So shout out to Beef Stew. But like, yeah, I mean, this Hornets team is on fire. I really hope they're the one that grabs the 8 seed. Then it's like Pistons Hornets round 1. I think that would be really, really fun. I mean, right now, like, if we end up getting Knicks versus Sixers or Knicks Magic, that's an interesting series. Even though the Magic are definitely an imperfect team, they're a squad that can give teams a hard time because of that defense. The Celtics, whoever they play, if it is Philly, it's another Embiid versus the Celtics thing, or if it's Celtics Magic, a rematch of last year now with Desmond Bane involved. And, we'll see what Jason Tatum looks like if he's back. Could there be an upset there? The Cavaliers, if it's them versus the Raptors, that's going to be like ugly, disgusting basketball at times. But the Cavs can even move up to like a 2 or a 3. They're only 1.5 games back of the Knicks and the Celtics, and they've won 4 games straight. They've won 9 out of their last 10. The first 2 games with James Harden here, they weren't perfect. Like you said, the Kings shot the lights out of the ball, and the Nuggets are the Nuggets, but they got the job done when it mattered the most. I don't know. I think I need to see a bigger sample size, but once Mobley returns, and also Max Strus is still in the wings somewhere. We'll see when he plays this season, what he even looks like. Like, I forget he exists at times, but if the Cavs look like the way I think they can with Mobley back, they might be my favorites in the Eastern Conference going to the playoffs. There are just so many question marks about a lot of these teams. Like, I love the Pistons, but the lack of shooting is really scary. Like, it's a big lack of shooting. And the second option being Jalen Duren outside of Cade Cunningham is a little bit scary. The Knicks, huge ups and downs. Are they going to be able to do enough defensively? Is Tatum back? What does he look like for the Celtics? Yeah, a lot better lately. I mean, I feel like ever since I made a video being like they're falling apart, they've been like, actually, no, we are the Detroit Pistons of the early 2000s, actually. But this Cavs team, I think they've got one of the best balances in the NBA, or especially in the Eastern Conference, of offense and defense. I think there's a lot of upside there. The big thing is going to be if they can overcome the fact that they've just not been able to overcome their playoff struggles at times, losing in the second round the last couple of years. Not surprising to the Boston Celtics.
So much of their playoff struggles last year, it was just injuries.
I agree.
Like, here's my take. I think last year's Cavaliers, if Darius Garland was healthy, would have won the Eastern Conference. And because I think that this year's Cavaliers can be, after the James Harden trade, can be just as good as last year's Cavaliers. So if they're healthy for this year's playoffs, that also to me, like, I think last year's Cavaliers healthy would win the East this year. Mm-hmm. So if more or less Harden brings them back to that point, then yeah, they kind of are the favorite to me at that point.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, again, I picked them to win the East coming into the season, and I think Harden is able to fix a lot of the issues we've seen so far. They've also just been playing better basketball even before Harden came in. Like, they were figuring out, again, they've won 4 in a row, 2 before Harden even got here, 9 of their last 10. Like, this Cavs team has been one of the hotter and better teams in the Eastern Conference over the last month or so. So then to make improvements with Harden, the defense of Keon Ellis as well. Schroeder is a pretty solid defender too. Like, I think they just got deeper. They're one of the deepest teams. They've got great top tier talent. I think Kenny Atkinson is a great head coach. I think there's a real chance they finish this season super, super strong. They finish as a top 3 seed and they win this whole conference. And one of my things has always been, it's really hard to make a big trade in the middle of a season and then go on like a championship type of run or win a conference. It was like, the Luka thing last year. A bunch of people are like, oh, the Lakers can win the West now. I'm like, I don't think they can. Like, you make that big of a shift in your identity, it's near impossible. But for the Cavaliers, the Harden thing is a huge addition, but it's not that big of a shift in their identity. Like, it's like you said, kind of just trying to get back to more of what they did last season. And Harden is that type of guy who does not get enough credit all the time for being a plug and play player. Everywhere he goes, sure, there are playoff struggles, but just in terms of the floor of the team and the ceiling, like, they become instantly better. They just win more basketball games when James Harden gets there.
Yeah, he's got that Chris Paul thing to him where it's like, well, he hasn't won a championship and he has choked once or twice in the playoffs. Therefore, he is not a winner. Therefore, he does not actually elevate teams.
Yeah. I saw a lot of that in my YouTube comments on the video that I made yesterday.
Yeah, like, dude, like, again, I think people are just judging James Harden from a past lens of his issues in the past. And I'm not saying James Harden won't dookie all over himself in Game 7. All right, he might. But I also think this team is good enough that they can overcome that. Like, the last time that happened with the Sixers, James Harden was way too important to that team for them to survive him doing that. But, like, on some nights, Darius Garland would be the 4th most important player on the Cavs, and they would still get the job done. And I think that same situation can be applicable. All that matters is that system maintains, that they play that way similarly. Like, Harden can go 4 for 21 or 7 for 10. Either way, if that system is maintaining itself throughout the entirety of the game, then that is a major win. But yeah, that I think is the East. I do think the Cavaliers, they have a very real shot of jumping. For me, the Pistons have been my favorite just because they're the most well-balanced team, which is funny because they're not even that well-balanced of a team. A lot of these Eastern Conference teams do have some major flaws. I said this about the Celtics with the Vucevic trade, that the Vucevic trade makes a lot more sense if Jason Tatum is returning. And I think it's more likely than not that they did the Vucevic trade with the intention of re-signing him this summer to be a part of that team next year. If we were just going purely based on this year, Anthony Simons scoring on the perimeter, no Jason Tatum would ultimately be more important than Vucevic. But I've liked what I've seen from Vucevic in the one game that I watched from him, because I think he's another guy whose reputation has just kind of been in the mud because of unfair circumstances. I really like that center rotation between him and Keita. But I want to primarily talk about Ayo Dosunmu and the Minnesota Timberwolves, because there's this effect that a lot of NBA fans experience when they're a fan of I would say, smaller market. That's one of my bigger grievances with the Bulls, is they are not a small market and they should be using that in their favor, but they fucking don't. At least we have 15 second-round picks. But the Ayo, I'm watching people realize how goddamn good Ayo is. And the last pod that we did, I was adamant, don't trade for Kobe White. Trade for Ayo. Ayo is a way better option for this team, and I'm really, really glad that that's the direction they went. His first game was okay. His second game, he dropped 20 points, and he's just so versatile. And I think I think his addition is the most important one for this season after that Harden deal. I don't think there is any other trade that affects this year more than that one after Harden.
Yeah, I mean, Ayo's awesome. It was a player I was hoping. I mean, yeah, we talked about it. I was like, if the Thunder make a trade, like, Ayo's someone I would love for the Thunder to go out there and get. We were on the same page with the Ayo Kobe White stuff. But that second game against the Hawks, Ayo was unbelievable. And he's just going to be so good there. he perfectly slots into what they've been missing without Nickeil Alexander-Walker, playing that similar role as like a hybrid shoot, defend, pass, like do a little bit of everything type of guy, that connective piece. And I think the Wolves have really missed that. There have been some really high highs for this team, some really low lows. They are super inconsistent. And Ayo just gives them someone who I think will bring some consistency and stability to that rotation, to that team. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot more sense than adding Kobe White, in my opinion. And we see that now, too, with the Hornets trading for Kobe White. And turns out there's an injury that cost the Bulls one extra second round pick in that deal. And I do want to get your thoughts on the Bulls overall deadline after we finish talking about this, because they made trades. But yeah, Ayo to the Wolves, I don't know if it vaults them to the point where I can see them like winning the West just because of some of those inconsistencies. And, you know, they did bring back Mike Conley. He just returns after being traded like 3 times and cut. But I still worry about the playmaking with that team a bit. I still worry about Julius Randle as that second option, as good as he's been at times. I think against some of the better defensive teams in the Western Conference, there are going to be big issues with him when it comes to turnovers and his offensive production, because that is important to the team. If Ant doesn't have it going, they need Randle to step up in a big way. But the thing with Ayo is he's so young that it will definitely make an impact this season. It makes me feel more confident in picking them in series against some teams. And I do think there's a world where the Wolves make another Western Conference Finals run if they get the right matchups. But even more so going forward, like, you know, Ayo's really young. He's not like his late 20s, early 30s or anything like that. And they make an upgrade to just try and get it done this season or in the next couple. Ayo can be here for a long time. They're going to re-sign him this offseason, I would imagine. And he's someone that could be here for a long time, could start at the 1 guard next season if they wanted to go that route. They can make other additions, and he's just going to fit in any context.
I have seen conflicting ideas as to who should start between him and DiVincenzo. If I'm not mistaken, he started at the Hawks game, but did not start his first game. At the very least, he played more minutes than Dante in his first in that Hawks game. But I think he makes more sense as that off guard next to Anthony Edwards, both as a starter and in those later moments. He's a better defender and playmaker than Dante, and while he's not as much of a movement shooter, percentages at the bare minimum would indicate that, like, as just a raw catch and shoot, don't leave this guy open guy, he's probably a little bit better in that realm too. So like, I think the big thing that Minnesota has needed, the big problem is that Randle and Anthony Edwards, the playmaking of that duo is kind of awkward a lot of the time. Anthony Edwards, I would wager there's probably very few, if any, players in the NBA who have the ball in his hands as much as he does, while simultaneously getting less than 4 assists per game. I don't know if there's anybody in the league who has as much on-ball usage as him with that. And that's not, I think with Anthony Edwards, the thing with his playmaking is he hasn't really gotten to the point of being an additive playmaker, but he's also not a subtractive one anymore like he used to be. So it's like not a problem, but it's also not a solution. It's not a weakness, but it's not a strength. And I think what that team has needed is a connective piece, connective tissue to kind of bring everything else together. And I think Ayo is exactly that. And I think Kobe White was not that, which makes this such a smart pickup. But I think this is enough that it moves them from, like, I wouldn't have even put them really in a B tier contender. I always have my personal way of lining things up is there's an A tier and a B tier. And the A tier teams, I'm like, oh yeah, they got it. They definitely can. And then B tier, I'm like, there's a set of circumstances needs to go their way to make it happen. But sometimes the set of circumstances goes your way. So it's still within the cards. I think for me, this moves them into B tier contender from a team that I would have had just outside of it. And I just think the roster is a lot more well balanced. And that's been their number one problem, is they clearly have a lot of talent, and that talent is so good on both ends of the floor that they average out to being a good team, because Rudy Gobert makes them a great defense. Anthony Edwards makes them a great offense. I think this is the best way to bring those two sides together in a more cohesive manner. And I'm very excited for it. I've been enjoying seeing NBA Twitter discover how good Ayo Dosunmu is.
Yeah. That was one of those things that was obviously going to happen the second. I mean, you know, imagine where he ends up with like the Lakers and suddenly he's going to be in all-star talks as soon as next season. Like, or
they would be going for his head. It's one of the two. It depends how it goes.
Yeah, it depends on how that first game goes, how they're going to be fans of him. Although, I mean, DeAndre Ayton has made it to this point, and some Lakers fans still kind of... I saw a tweet last night that was a Lakers fan being like, I think I'm done with DeAndre Ayton. I'm like, it took you this long? Like, you're only now realizing that he's not that great?
I think they should keep DeAndre Ayton just as a bench piece. Like, I think if DeAndre Ayton plays 16 to 20 minutes per night and you have like a Daniel Gafford type of big man as your go-to starter, I think that is ideal. But like basically have him have like a 2021 Bobby Portis type of role where it's like, yeah, you're a really good offensive big man who is not terrible on defense. Let's run it for like 15 to 20 minutes.
Went from pick number one in a stacked 2018 draft class over Luka Doncic and Shea to, hey, bro, be 2021 Bobby Portis for us, please. Like, we're just begging you to be 2021 Bobby Portis, bro. That's all we need. No,
yeah.
What a life.
Yeah. So he wanted me to talk about the Bulls. I mean, my perspective on this for a minute has been the same. I would give anything for something different. Like, and I am like perfectly willing to accept disappointing trade returns and like all of that for finally, the 9th seed is not the goal. Like, I was watching the first Bulls game after the deadline. I forgot who the fuck they were even playing. It didn't matter. They were getting cooked the whole time. I didn't watch the Nets game. I watched the game right before that.
Denver. That was versus Denver.
Denver. Yeah, it was Denver. The way that I had more feeling watching that game than I have for the last like 2.5 years. The more I was so filled with joy at how awful this team was, to where I was like, finally, there isn't a chance in hell that this team can manage to walk its way into the 9th seed for no reason. They've made the roster so ass that it just can't be achieved even if they wanted to. And like, it's hilarious watching this Bulls rotation. I saw a lineup that was Rob Dillingham, Colin Sexton, Anthony Simons, Isaac Okoro, and why am I blanking on that? Gershon Yabusele. That is one of the funniest NBA lineups I've heard of in my entire life. Like, the way that the Bulls have become the haven for reject starting point guards. Like, guys who were projected and even for a little bit were starting point guards, and then everyone was like, yeah, never mind. Colin Sexton's definitely more of a 6-man. Anthony Simons definitely more of a 6-man. Minnesota believed in Rob Dillingham so much, and Fournot didn't benefit anything from it. I'm pretty sure I saw Jaden Ivey at power forward in that game. Like, that's bonkers, but it's also ass. This is a terrible team that will miss the playoffs, that will have decent lottery odds. And let me tell you, there is maybe nothing in this world that would bring more happiness to me than if we had a top 3 pick in this draft. I don't care who it ends up being, but one of those 3 guys I would ascend to heaven just to have the potential of a genuine superstar caliber player on this team. And like, the fact that there were quotes coming out that it seemed like the Bulls might try and stand pat once again, I was like, it might actually break me to see us get the 12th pick in the draft because of all of that nonsense. So like, I'm just praying, I'm hoping that like, please, for the love of God, let this work out. Let us get the number 3 pick or higher in the draft for once, because the highest they have gone in my time as a fan is 4th overall, which they used on fucking Patrick Williams. Get into that top 3, and I could maybe find happiness and peace and positivity with this team. As for what this team looks like for the rest of the year, I could give a fuck. I don't care. The only thing that matters at all to me on this team is the development of Manas Buzelis. Every other player on this team could be traded for chips tomorrow for all that I care. And I felt that way about the rest of the roster before all of these trades went down. And like, there's people on Twitter like making fun of the Bulls for all of this. And like, I get it. But like, a lot of it is just, this is the bed that they made and now they're sleeping in it. I already knew they made the bed. I already knew that they weren't going to get any draft capital out of Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic and Ayo Dosunmu. Like, that was already established. It didn't surprise me. None of these trades was I like, holy shit, they got completely fleeced. It was like, yeah, they didn't get a good return for a guy whose value plummeted because they did not cash in when the value was high. That is obviously frustrating. There's a million different things I would change about how we got to the road we're on now, but at least we're on the fucking road, and that's all that I can focus on. I could give a shit if the return for Vucevic, Ayo, and Kobe is disappointing. That is better than not trading them at all, which was very much in the cards and very much what the Bulls have done in the past.
Love it. I mean, that's the first great Bulls rant we've gotten on here. I'm sure this podcast is going to have many of those. I feel the same way. I'm just glad y'all did something. Like, if they stood pat again, I was going to like actually come on here. We're going to have like a 30, 45 minute therapy session. I'd be like, listen, man, it's okay. If you want to jump ship, it's understandable. Also, on the Patrick Williams thing, it's so funny that on this team out of all of them, he doesn't even crack 18 minutes. Like, he gets the least minutes out of anybody that gets the chance to play on a team that has no like forwards at all. It's all guards. I'm glad the Bulls did something. I think they're in a much better position now than they were going to the deadline because they can suck. They can get a pick, even if it's like, 8 or 9. At least it's not like 11 or 12 and you're not fighting for the play-in and you're like, please don't get hot for 2 games and just make it into the playoffs randomly and we don't have a lottery pick. Like, at least they have a shot. I mean, the Hawks and Mavericks have jumped in a big way. Maybe the Bulls are next. We'll see with these flattened lottery odds. But right now, they're the 11th seed. They're not going to make the play-in because the Hornets are red hot. There's just no way. We'll see if the Bucks bring back Giannis, but they could get down to like the 12th seed in the Eastern Conference. It's not out of the realm of possibility, and we'll see. I'm rooting for the Bulls to make something happen. I'm just glad that they finally pulled the trigger. Yes, it is hilarious that they only got like 1 million second-round picks and somehow managed to never get a first-round pick, not even a protected one. But hey, picks are picks,
Yeah, one of them is also like projected to be like the 32nd pick in the draft. So like it's not, at least it was a good first or good second rounder. I could also see them pulling off one of those trades to a contending level team that has like the 28th pick in the draft and just be like, we'll give you 5 second round picks for this draft pick now.
Yeah.
Because those occasionally happen when a team doesn't really know what to do with their first round pick. So they go, put it off for later. I will say this. Number one gripe is that they traded for Rob Dillingham, and I'm very confident that they are going to hold on to him. Like Sexton and Simons, whatever. They're going to be gone next year. I don't think that they have any part in this team other than just playing well enough to ensure they get paid in the offseason. However, when it comes to just fucking the actual future, I think they really think Dillingham's going to be that guy, and them trading for him right after I release a video about the death of the small guard is just so funny for them to be like, yep, we agree. This position is fucked. So we're going to trade for one just to prove your point. We're going to trade for literally
the smallest guard there is.
Yeah, let's see firsthand just how right you are. One more thing, and I've had this take before. I don't know if I've ever shared it with you. If there was ever a team, like people think the NBA draft is rigged. If there was ever a team that deserved and would be smart for the NBA to rig the draft for, and this is not just cope, there's logic behind this, it's the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are one of the top billing franchises in the entire NBA, in spite of the fact that they are irrelevant to the actual NBA discussion at large at all times. The United Center, that fan base is very loyal. They show up and they watch their mediocrity year after year after year. So can you imagine what could come of it if the Chicago Bulls drafted Darren Peterson? He becomes one of the best players in the NBA, and the Bulls are now like potential contenders. Like, that would be very good for the league at large. So Adam Silver, if you're watching, please, there is no reason not to do it. Why does Darren Peterson need to go to the Utah Jazz? What sense does that make? Give the Bulls the number 1 pick in the draft for the love of God. please, 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 just give them the number 1 pick. I need it more than I need oxygen.
The Bulls have this man doing Sabrina Carpenter renditions live on the podcast. It reminds me of the clip from Please, Please, Please. Anyways,
I did not get that.
He had slightly biased had that clip last year when the Mavericks won the lottery. And people are like, it's rigged. He's like, oh, if it's rigged, good. Glad it happened to my team. Thank God that the lottery is rigged for my favorite team. Like, that very much feels like your perspective here on the Bulls. I mean, it's crazy because, yeah, you think about the Bulls as this long-standing historic franchise, and it's like, since I became an adult in 2018, the best player they've had was like maybe 2021 Lonzo Ball when he was going crazy, and DeMar DeRozan for that season where he was an all-star and they were the 1 seed at like right around the all-star break. It's like, wow, the Chicago Bulls are back, but nobody really thought they were a championship contender. Like, they've just, I'm very hopeful. I would love to see the Bulls be good because I think basketball and the NBA are better when the Bulls are good and relevant. Just not been the case for a little while now. So we'll see. But I'm very happy for you that you got Rob Dillingham in your 2nd round picks.
This is so fucked up because I remember back in the day, like discussing with you, like which one of us had it worse. Because it was like the contrast of like, what's worse, to have great talent and then fall short, or to just never have that great talent and constantly be mediocre. Well, I think it's better to have great talent, fall short, and then acquire more great talent and win a championship.
Yeah,
probably.
I think I'm in a little bit of a better spot. I mean, y'all do have more 2nd round picks than us. Like, you've now outpicked the Thunder, which is impressive.
You. So fucking evil. Y'all still got more 1st round picks by a long shot while being the fucking favorites to repeat. Is fucking bullshit. You want to talk about
rigging the lottery, making some drama happen, something interesting? Let's get that Clippers pick up to number 1 and get the Thunder dare beaters. And let's go ahead and do that.
I didn't even fucking think about that the Clippers are going to miss the playoffs now.
Yeah. So real quick, we're talking about the Thunder deadline.
No wonder you like the James Harden trade so much.
Oh, I love it. Oh, yeah. Like, when they traded Zubats, I tweeted in all caps, trade Kawhi next at LA Clippers. Like, I'm like, trade everybody, which I do think also, like, you know, it's a sunk cost already for your picks for the Clippers. They got to get younger. They got to try and capitalize on value. And I think they've done that pretty well for those guys. I think they should do the same for Kawhi, not just because the Thunder also have the Clippers swap next year, but because, you know, it'd be because Kawhi probably is the most value he's ever going to have right now for the rest of his career. But real quick on the Thunder's deadline, love it because the Clippers got worse. We didn't have to make any moves for that to happen. They're going to miss the playoffs. That will be a lottery pick. And also, I love the addition of Jared McCain. He's been awesome in his first 2 games. Not crazy like stat sheet totals, but if you look at the numbers, I mean, yesterday against the Lakers, he had 5 points in literally the first 2 possessions he comes in. The spacing is unbelievable. To have him and Isaiah Joe, it's a very limited sample size. It's only like 13 minutes. The Thunder have a net rating of like 65 when those 2 are on the court together. Like, it's unbelievable the amount of offensive juice that team has. And I cannot wait to see those 2 guys play alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the same time. Like, Shai will never have more space in his entire life. Jared McCain gives us a shooter who's confident. He's already knocked down a couple of middies. Like, he is someone who's going to put up shots, and that's what we need. He's competed really well on the defensive end, too. He's only 21 years old, and we gave up the Rockets pick this year, which the Rockets, if they win tonight, are the 3 seed in the Western Conference, and 2nd round picks for Jared McCain, who last season looked like a budding all-star and has shown some of those flashes again this season, albeit more inconsistently coming back from injury. And I think he's still got that upside in the tank, not to mention the Thunder being a championship level team right now with the new CBA and the way things work. You got to find ways to get younger, get cheaper to try and maintain a window. Bringing Jared McCain does exactly that. So love the deadline.
You guys are a bunch of fucking scammers. I'm so fucking sick of it.
My brother texted me last night. He's a Sixers fan, if y'all didn't know out there watching the pod. And he's like, I hate you so much because I'm watching Kyle Lowry play 18 minutes for the Sixers as our backup guard tonight. And you're watching Jared McCain fry the Lakers. And I'm like, yeah, it's a good life.
I mean, I understand you had to like walk through miles of blood and bone to get there. But like, God damn, fuck you for it now.
And you know what?
It's weird because I was rooting for OKC on the way up, and now that they're here, I'm just like, all right, that's enough. That's enough.
Hey, you know what? That's fair. I remember we were having a conversation in Vegas a couple years ago at Summer League, and we were talking about it, and you're like, man, I'm like a side Thunder fan just because the Bulls aren't doing it right now, and I love the direction they're heading, and hey, you got to see like kind of a side championship, so congrats.
Yeah, nothing like a side championship. I've experienced a few because Denver in basically every year during the playoffs, I'll just like kind of become a kind of fan of a team just for the sake of like putting some more personal stakes into it to feel something. Yeah, to feel something. Yeah. OKC was my pick last year, but I kind of ended up liking Indiana so much that by the time we got to the finals, I was like, man, I don't really know what I want to happen.
That's fair with the Pacers.
And then, yeah, they're just so likable. And then Denver in 2023, I was with Denver the whole way. I was with Dallas the whole way in 2024. That shit didn't work out, but I was with the Bucks all the way in 2021. I went to a finals and a second round game for that team, which was extremely financially irresponsible. But at the end of the day,
I mean,
very
I don't
core
want to talk
basketball
about how much
memories.
I spent on going to Thunder playoff games this past year. I don't want to talk about how much the ticket to Game 7 of the NBA.
You went to one of the finals, right?
I went to 4 finals games.
What the fuck?
I went to Game 2, Game 5, Game 6, and Game 7.
You just end up spending a week or two in Oklahoma?
No, so Game 2, I went there, came back. Game 5, went there, came back. I one that was paid for me, so I didn't have to pay for that ticket. Indiana is not really that far from New York City. It was like a couple hour flight. So I went to Indiana, and that was way cheaper than the stuff in Oklahoma City. Like, that was not really that expensive of a trip all too much. And then, I did a lot of back and forths. I did stay, though, for Game 7 and then the parade, so I didn't, like, fly back and forth for that one. But it costs more money than I want to talk about, but I got to see my favorite team win an actual championship, rather, not a side one necessarily, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I will one day. Maybe Darren Peterson gets drafted by the Bulls.
Hey, that Rob Dillingham Shea, duel in the NBA Finals in a couple of years, it's going to go crazy, man.
Yeah. I'm still... This can't beat me out of the joy, though, that I don't have to watch Nikola Vucevic, Kobe White hoops anymore.
What an end of an era, man. What an end of an era.
Like, that, I felt something when I watched their game versus Denver. And it wasn't a good feeling necessarily, but it invoked an emotion. And for the last 2 years, the Bulls have actually shot down the list of most watched teams for me because they truly, I feel empty when I watch them perform. But no, now I remember watching them post Jimmy Butler trade and being like, man, this is exciting because I have something to look forward to. Even if there's a bunch of negativity, at least there's something at the end of the tunnel. There used to be nothing at the end of that tunnel except for a first round smackdown or losing to the Heat play-in. So ultimately still very happy. But I'm really looking forward to these playoffs. I think this is going to be a more deep competitive playoffs because the West also is a little bit deeper than it was last year.
I want to talk about just in general how competitive the league is going to be because people are talking about the tanking stuff. There's only 3 or 4 teams that I actively believe are going to try to be bad next season. In the West, Thunder, Spurs, Nuggets, Rockets, Lakers, Timberwolves, Suns, Warriors, Blazers. Clippers don't have their own picks, so there's no incentive for them to be bad. So those top 10 teams, none of them are going to really try to be bad. I think the Grizzlies are probably going to try to tank. They're dealing everybody away. The Mavericks with Cooper Flag and probably a top pick this year, I don't think they're going to actively try to be bad. Plus Kyrie coming back, I think they could be a pretty solid team next season. The Jazz aren't going to try to. The Pelicans apparently think they're a playoff team, so we'll see on them. But, maybe they try to be bad. So, let's say them and the Grizzlies for sure, and then the Kings will absolutely be. So that's 3 teams in the Western Conference. But out East, Pistons, Knicks, Celtics, Cavs, Raptors, Sixers, Magic, Heat, Hawks, kind of maybe, but I don't think they will with Jalen Johnson. I don't think they're not going to actively try to be bad.
And the Hornets too.
Yeah, the Hornets are back.
The go-to shit team in the East is no longer shit.
Exactly. The Wizards have actively made moves. The Pacers are obviously going to be back. We'll see what happens with the Bucks and Giannis, but for sure, I can say the Bulls are going to try to be bad, for your sake. I hope so. And then the Brooklyn Nets, they don't have their own pick next year, so they might make some moves. They might try to take some swings. There's only a few teams that are going to actively try to be bad next season. Yeah, it's going to be a deep NBA.
I did not understand the pearl clutching about the tanking stuff because this is really what set that off. We've had so many years where teams are way more egregiously tanking. And this year, it's such a good draft class. It's just going to lead to more teams doing that.
Yeah.
That's fine. And I really think there are just so many more issues with the games before tanking because it's whether or not the Jazz win 40 games or 20, unless you're you and me who do this for a job, who is watching the Jazz regardless? who is tuning in for those games, whether they are trying to be competitive with mediocre talent or not? I just don't think it actually impacts the viewer experience more often than not, because 9 times out of 10, a team that is tanking is a team that was otherwise likely going to be irrelevant anyway.
Yeah, unless you're like a fan of the Jazz, like, you know, a lot of people listening to this are probably more diehard fans than like casual fans. Casual fans are going to watch like the 3 best teams in the NBA and like nationally televised games. They're not going to lock in like that. And like, I mean, what the Jazz play Jaren Jackson Jr. for the rest of the season. What, they've got 17 wins right now. What are they going to end up with? 30 maybe? They're not going to make the play-in even. Like, it does nothing for them. And also, we continue to talk about today's NBA having like ligament injuries and stuff like that. It just doesn't make sense to risk it. Now, they are doing it egregiously by playing those guys for the first 3 quarters and then benching everybody in the fourth. Like, I understand why people are annoyed that it's like that blatant and in your face, but at the same time, like, I don't really care because I think it's going to set them up. They get a top pick and they made the trade for Jaren. Like, they're actively trying to be better in the first place. It's not like we had years where teams were just trading everybody away. You know, this is the beginning of like the Sam Hinkie type stuff. And for a few years after that, like, teams are like, let's just trade away literally everybody and start from scratch and be absolutely terrible. Teams are making upgrades like the Wizards and Jazz. Sure, they want to get a top pick this year because they've already sunk all this time into they're just bad basketball teams. It's not like they've tried to be bad up until this point. They're just bad teams. And now they've made additions and they're like, okay, let's grab 1 top pick and be competitive next year. And I think ultimately, like, this type of stuff is just going to make the league so much better next season, more competitive. So that's basically the short on my whole tanking thing. I also thought it was like, people are saying this is the worst it's ever been. It's just not. It's not even close to the worst it's ever been.
People have short memories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, I would argue that foul baiting and the leniency on travels and the injury issues with the NBA schedule being what it is, those are way bigger issues than tanking is. I really just have never bought into the notion that tanking is some major problem with the NBA.
Yeah.
And I think also it's like, what do you want them to do? Because changing the lottery odds was basically the most that could be done, because otherwise you're talking about upheaving and fundamentally changing everything about how the draft works. And if that's what your proposition is, then go for it, dude. But like, we're not getting there. That's not going to happen. We're not going to change it to some system of like, I've seen this proposed. Let's have all of the playoff teams or all of the non-playoff teams have their own like single elimination playoff to compete for the number 1 picks. Like, you guys, first of all, players don't care about competing for the top pick 9 times out of 10 because they're on a bad team that views them as expendable more likely than not. So It doesn't mean dick to them. Like, it's stupid. Like, unless you want to fundamentally upheave the entire system, you cannot get around the fact that it is better to be a 20-something win team and have a chance at landing a generational star than it is to be a 30-something win team and miss the playoffs and get the 12th pick. Like, you can't change that. It's just the way that it is. Sucks to suck, but changing the lottery odds was really the only thing that could be done, and I don't think we should change them to any larger extreme than what they already are.
Yeah, I mean, the tournament thing, that's been... People make all these suggestions. I've always thought that's the stupidest thing ever. Like, the Wolves right now are the 6th seed. Let's say they fall down 1 game to be the 7th seed, because that's not unrealistic. They could do that. They're super inconsistent. And then suddenly, like, you know, Ant tweaks something and they lose a couple games and now they're in this tournament. And now it's like the Wolves are going to destroy everybody and grab Darren Peterson.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you ensure, like, how are the Sacramento Kings possibly going to win this tournament? Who, like, they need, if there's a team that needs like a top pick, it's them. Credit to the Kings. They've played guys. They just suck. They're just straight up terrible.
Yeah.
Like, they need a top pick. That would just doom them forever. We would never see the Kings escape the 14th, 15th spot in the Western Conference ever again. They've lost 13 straight games right now as I'm talking to you. Like, they're 12-43. It's just never made any sense. Like, I've seen people, you know, say like, oh, you can only be in the lottery for a couple of years. What happens if a team like is, you know, just straight up bad? Like, they're grabbing pieces, they're trying to rebuild, but they're bad. And then you just punish them. Like it's not like every team that is in the lottery for 3-4 years is just straight up tanking. They might just be bad. So it's Yeah, nothing has ever made sense to me in terms of trying to fix that situation. I think it's fine as it is. Tanking is not this big issue people make it out to be. It's like the boogeyman for some reason. And it's annoying when everybody's like, oh my gosh, we've got to stop this tanking. Like the Wizards aren't playing Anthony Davis. I'm like, AD is made of glass. Why would they play him when they have 14 wins and 36 losses, 38 losses? It makes no sense. Anyways, that's my little rant to end off the podcast.
Yeah, this doesn't make sense to me because like there are 30 NBA teams. If 10 of them are tanking, which there isn't, but if 10 of them are tanking, just watch the other 20 teams. Like, it's really not that hard. Most of the time, like, there has to be bad teams. That's how it works. You can have years where some of the middle-ish teams, the kind of bad but not terrible teams, are like more competitive than they are all of the time. But like at the end of the day, there are going to be 4 or 5 teams that win sub 30 games every single season. And like whether that is intentional or not doesn't really change much about the fact that there are always going to be teams that are that bad.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to me to get so hung up on the manner. And the other thing is like, you cannot like it, but like there's like this moralizing around tanking in a way. Like it goes against the competitive spirit. And it's like, actually, I think choosing to lose so that you can win way more in the future is the more competitive move than trying to win 35 to 40 games every single year. I would argue that the Bulls, by blowing it up at this deadline, did more to be competitive in the future than they are than being a 40-win team would do right now. Like, I think it is just the short-term idea of like intentionally losing. I get how that's not competitive, quote unquote, but like in the long-term view, it is absolutely the competitive decision. Sitting on your hands is the not competitive decision.
It's cowardly, and the Bulls have upgraded from
straight up.
They've upgraded from cowards to cowards with 1 million second-round picks.
Well, that was the Shootaround, ladies and gentlemen. That was a very fun time. We will see you again next week. I think next episode we're going to start doing the post show that's about 30 minutes or so long. So if you want some extra podcast content there, go check that out. Link in the description and all that. But yeah, I think that's it.
Yep.
See y'all later.
See ya.